together.
We're so close. We can do our own opening.
Well, welcome to the panel discussion between the candidates running for the county commission. To my right, we have Wesley and Ruta. Now, if you will introduce yourselves and give a brief discussion of yourself and your passion, please.
Hello, can you hear me? So I'm almost certain everyone here has already met both Ruta and myself, but just in case, once more for everyone in the back, my name is Wesley Ann Beggs, and I filed to be your next Sarasota County Commissioner because we deserve better. We really just, as a community, we deserve better representation, not even just at the top, but at every level of government. And I've often referred to myself as a millennial unicorn, and that I have always been really interested in politics. I went to college here, I graduated in political science. I went on to found my own marketing and media company, which I work with other local businesses, nonprofits, community organizations, things and people like that. But I'm here to represent people that value environmental protection, affordable housing, and sustainable development, not just this build it first, plan it second, which I'm sure everyone in this room at one point or another has felt like our county commission is not listening to us. And I agree. That's why I ran. I ran out of frustration, but I am more optimistic than ever that we as a community can be the change that we have been waiting for and to be the change that we deserve. So I encourage you all to get involved. Remind 5 friends to vote if you could. I'm sure everyone here has heard me say that ad nauseum, but it's still true. If you've got 5 more friends, tell them too. So yeah, my name is Wesley Ann Beggs, and I look forward to being your next county commissioner.
Hi everyone, I'm Ruta Jouniari, and thank you all for staying to listen to us. It's getting very lonely out here at these CONA and neighborhood association meetings. One of the reasons that I'm running is to give a voice back to the people. Repetitively, I've sat in on commissioner meetings where residents have voiced their opinions loud and clear, and they're still going unheard. And I have to agree with Mr. Lobeck on the single member districts that I do believe that that would give a voice back to us, the people, because currently they're very dismissive. People come up and we have citizens who do wonderful, beautiful presentations about the way they see their neighborhoods and they see things, and it's extremely dismissive by the commissioners. So I do believe that if we have commissioners voted on a different way, that we may actually have better representation. I will be fighting for the environment. I do believe that our environment links directly to our economy here locally in Sarasota. We've seen devastation of the red tide. We've seen its effects. We've seen businesses closed. We see charter boats closed, being shopped. It's devastating, and it's devastating to our community, not just now, but in the long run. And we have to make sure we elect people who will have the foresight to look into the future and to say, we need plans now that will be here for today, tomorrow, and the next 10 years. I also believe that we need proper infrastructure. Currently, the developers are developing at a fairly fast clip, not necessarily developing smart. They're not utilizing, I believe, the best plans necessary for the community to grow and prosper. We're having flooding issues, traffic issues. These are things that I would like to address, and also make a better plan forward just to make sure we do have safety and security. And also the other thing, in traveling the county anywhere from Northport to the airport, is basically there's a lack of affordable housing and good paying jobs. And that's something that we really need to address as a county. I actually am running a free clinic, a medical clinic down in Northport this Saturday. Northport has one of the highest populations in the state of Florida of homeless families living in cars. This is our county. It has to be addressed. We have to have somebody who does care about the people, who does care about the voices that aren't being heard, and I hope to be that person come November 6th.
Our next candidate is Maio.
Do an imitation. should.
And as you can see, Mr. Mayo is not present. Mr. Mayo is one of the candidates that I was talking about in a rant that I published and sent out about how horrible it is to be in a community where candidates will literally shun the voters and express their disdain for submission to being subjected to their questions. That they feel they can win an election on marketing alone. Mr. Ziegler also is in the same boat. And I will ask Wesley and Ruta how many forums they have attended that these two candidates who are opposing them have not.
Well, between the primary and the general election, upwards of maybe 15 or 20 that we've all been invited to, all of us candidates, and I have seen Commissioner Mayo at 2 of those. Tiger Bay for our primary panel discussion, and then once since the primary last week in Venice.
Was that the Venetian?
Yes.
I've been with Christian in 3 different panels. And most of them have been either, one is Tiger Bay, the other one was on ABC7 in a live debate, and then at the Venetian as well. So outside of that, we've been invited to many, many neighborhood association meetings, and they truly just don't come.
And they don't even bother to give an excuse, generally. They don't even read them all. One question that I'd like to ask that has been voiced by Mr. Mayo at a forum that I attended, and I know you two were there. He boasted that the county has been lowering taxes for 20 years, and how wonderful it is. Using the number of employees, programs, and the variety of community interactions, what does a comparison from years ago to today suggest about the competence and effectiveness of departments such as parks? Do you think taxpayers would rather have better government services and programs and well-funded reserves than saving $100 in their taxes?
That's a loaded question. The first part is, as far as tax dollars and set-asides for parks and other services, I briefly looked over the budget for, the proposed budget for the coming year. One of the things that I saw a cut in is actually health and human services. As many of you know, we have an opioid crisis in our area. We have a tremendous amount of homelessness in our communities. And taking away health and human services only will add to those problems. As far as the tax base goes, I don't think necessarily all our tax dollars are utilized for the best purposes. I think we need to really look at the budget. I know Mr. Mayo had said that we do have a surplus and there's a lot of money in the banks right now for the county for funding. I would just like to see some of that funding actually being put to good use to service our community a little bit better, and especially in the health and human services aspect.
Well, I think to answer your question, do people want services in exchange for their tax? I think that Sarasota citizens have time and again proved that that is accurate, and we can look towards the school referendum as a good example of that, where people understand the value of it, and if we're not well funding some of these services, that we as a community will collectively opt in to make sure that those things are being taken care of. And if you have lived in this area or owned your home in this area for quite some time, I challenge you to take out your tax bill from maybe 15 or 20 years ago before the recession. You were paying more in taxes then than you are now. And that isn't necessarily an issue, but I think it becomes an issue when we're going through these budget discussions and we're seeing things being cut, like our library hours or the SCAT system, and we're actively removing services from our most vulnerable populations without recouping that in any meaningful capacity. And I think I actually came to blows a little bit with Commissioner Maio at the Venetian about this, that while we do have plenty of reserves in our natural disaster, like should Hurricane Irma come back, we have the money to handle that scenario. What we do not have is money in our economic uncertainty fund. And it's not an if but a when type of thing about the next recession. And in fact, there have been many people, economists, that have presented to our Board of County Commission that it's not if it's going to happen, it's when it's going to happen again, and we're ill-equipped. We frankly are ill-equipped for that. So I think we need to stop targeting our most vulnerable populations and make sure that everybody is receiving a high quality of life and they're receiving the services that they should and rightfully be receiving.
The important thing about that is that some of the funds that he was referring to are dedicated funds. It's not as if you can take, if you have a need that arises, you can't go and take it from this pot if it's reserved for that pot. So we used to have general fund reserves that were much higher than they are.
Can I say one point to that real quick? In our last budget season in 2018, there actually a proposal that is on the table is taking $4.1 million out of our sensitive environmental land procurement fund and shifting that over into the general fund because they can't seem to plug the holes in their own budget. That's completely ill-advised on many different levels and just an affront to us as a community that they can't seem to say no to developers and they can't do the right thing with impact fees, so they're taking it out on our environment, and we can all look to the base right now in red tide to see the consequences of those decisions.
Sticking with the budget, this is a double question. Do you believe the county commission is, the county budget is financially in good standing? And if not, what services would you propose to cut? Because we have a balanced budget issue. We have to balance a budget, so you wind up having to make those kinds of decisions. You want to start?
As far as balancing the budget, I have to look at numbers and look at the entire budget, and I don't have it in front of me, so I am a finance person, so I hate commenting on finances if I don't see them in front of me for numbers. However, having said that, as far as pulling and balancing budgets go for our county, again, I think we have to make sure that we collect as a county proper impact fees. We make the developers pay their way for what they're paving over to make sure that we have an income structure that will correlate over time. I think what happens now is the impact fees that are collected, if we take them over time, they're not sufficient enough to cover the infrastructure needs. So we actually end up being short. And that's when our tax dollars go into that. So I think having looked at that, we have to make a better plan overall for budgeting and looking at where we allocate our resources. One of the concerns that I have in speaking to the Fire Association and the police chiefs and all of that is first responders, we don't have enough money in our budget now to expand our EMS services. And it's troublesome because we're expanding our growth in our census, population's booming, but we haven't increased our budget to service the EMS that will provide first response to our citizens. So these are things that were worrisome to me. So for me, personally, I'd like to relook at all of the budget in detail and then find things that we can look at to cut perhaps or shift. But I think we just also have to be smart about the money that we do collect and the use that it goes to.
So I already touched a bit on some of my concerns with our budget, like our uncertainty fund, but I would also caution everyone on your ballot this November are a couple homestead exemptions that on the surface sound lovely, right? It would be maybe an extra $100 in your pocket, but it's really going to take it out on our county budget. So by 2021, should these referendums pass, I think it's Amendment 1 and 2, on your ballot, if they pass, they're projecting an $11 million deficit by year 2021. So we are balanced right now, yes, because we have to be, but we are on the precipice of some very bad news for a lot of services, projects that this community really cares about, things that are near and dear to our neighborhoods. And I feel we're already at an inadequate level of service existing right now, and when we're facing something like that, I would quote Commissioner Charles Hines and saying, we're not having an honest conversation with the people of this county about the reality of our budget. We could lose our AAA rating. There's all kinds of ramifications of running the county budget so on the line like this, and that's where my concern really lies.
Question from the audience. A recent University of Florida study went into the Board of County Commissioners last month, or presented to the Board of County Commissioners last month. They indicated that citizens are okay with a tax increase. What is the fear of your challengers? Why do you think they are afraid to increase taxes?
Because he wants to be reelected. No one is going to win an election saying, oh, I'm going to raise your taxes. That's just simply not going to happen. But again, echoing what Commissioner Hines had said, we're not having an honest conversation with ourselves. And at what point is the cost benefit really shaking out in our favor? Are we getting what we need to get from our government? Are we being provided a level of service that we've come to expect here? And while we consistently rank fairly high in quality of life, I dare say the 42% of people that can't pay their rent in this county would beg to differ on that, and that we really need to make sure that we're covering our bases and addressing those needs.
No one gets elected saying they're going to ever raise taxes, so I think that's a fear of everyone. Again, I think for our current situation, I don't see that we need to propose a tax hike right now currently for Sarasota County. I think we have to look to, again, impact fees and developers to make sure they pay their fair share, to uphold that if we collect those funds, we would have a lot more money in our pot and be able to actually do the infrastructure and things we need to do as a county. And the burden should not come back to the taxpayers. Many of the citizens have been paying taxes for decades and decades here in Sarasota County. We have new developments coming in, and we end up going from our tax dollars to pay for those new development and the infrastructure there, and it's not fair to the citizens. So I really don't want to raise our taxes. I think we've paid them enough, and I think we just need to hold someone else a little bit more accountable for funding.
Okay. To another topic from the audience. Public transportation is the second largest general fund expenditure at $30 million a year. Is that the figure that you had? What are your views on the current efforts to privatize the fixed route bus service?
I'm against this. Private companies have to operate at a profit. We know that. Our government does not with our current bus system. I think it's unwise to open it up to, I think they put out a request for proposals for different private companies to come in and do it. I don't see that as the solution. I think it's just kind of grabbing for straws to see what they can come up with. It's a broken system. It's unreliable. It's late. It's not going to fix the problem. I think it's going to make it more expensive on the whole for the average person. And when we're talking about people that ride the bus, we're talking about people that may not be able to afford an increase in ticket prices or something like that.
For the SCAT busing system, I actually do not support the system that we have currently. I don't think it's working. I think when you drive around and you see SCAT buses with one person driving around in the county in an empty bus, it's not servicing that many people. It's not doing its job. We have people that complain it's difficult to get a ride on the SCAT. You have to wait a long time to get the bus. Then you change routes along the way until you get to your destination. So it's not a very practical system. I'm not opposed to having some requests for proposals or to have some new influx of ideas of how to better run SCAT. We've had control, the county's had control of it for some time, and it's not working. It's not benefiting most citizens. You still repetitively hear people saying, I'm not taking SCAD, it's not working, it's too long, and you hear all of these reasons why not to use it. I think we either have to bring in someone to analyze SCAD and take a look at how we make it more functional. Public transportation, we're an aging community. Sarasota, statistically, we do have an older population. They can't drive well into their 80s and 90s here. They need access to better public transportation. And I think right now, like I said, currently I don't think we're doing a favor to anyone with the system we have, and I really would like to actually revamp it and relook at it and make it a user-friendly system that actually everybody can enjoy and everyone would utilize the service also, so that we take away the carbon footprint, that we take away maybe we don't have to have as much traffic congestion, because I came from Boston and we had a great system of public transportation. People would go to work with it. People would go on weekends, use it. And here, it's like I said, a bus is half empty most of the time, so I don't think it's doing a great service to us.
With regard to necessary tax increases, how do you reach out to voters to build support for it? And how do you build a case for a necessary tax increase? Okay. How do you reach out to voters to build support? And how do you build a case for a necessary tax increase?
Well, should we have to have a tax increase? I think Wesley said it, in the case of, you have to have a reason why to raise taxes. In the case for needing to address our schools, people overwhelmingly said, let's get the millage rate up because we need to improve schools. I think if it comes to something that's a critical need in our community, I would say, like, say for instance, even the EMS, because when you talk to these first responders and they had told me in a meeting that, you know, if you're having a cardiac arrest, the response time normally should be 10 minutes and they're at 25 minutes. That's the difference between life and death. And that's frightening. And so for me, if it came to that realization of being in the county commission and saying, look, I think all of us want EMS to have better responses because it's our lives on the line, you would have to find something that everybody believes in order to raise taxes. So I think, like I said, in schools, things that people care about.
I would echo that you have to really relate it and make them understand how it's affecting them and what the options are and why it is beneficial to approve something like that. Yes, seeing it from the schools and things like that. I think that we are a willing population to continue to support things like that. Although I don't think either one of us are actively campaigning and talking to voters about why we're going to raise their taxes. I will say that people do ask me a lot about it. People that are ready to spend that extra money because they are not happy with the level of service. And you can't just whip up public libraries out of nowhere. It has to be funded. So I do see already an existing level of support for something like that on both sides of the aisle, to be totally honest. From Democrats and Republican constituents alike, they're at least willing to explore it because they understand that we are operating at a deficit of services. We're just not getting what we should be getting from our government.
One last topic in that area. Do you believe the county commission is taking the correct tack in trying to sell as much surplus property as possible in order to shore up future budgets?
Well, I'm 100% against selling county property. It's not the commission's property, it's our property. It's yours, it's mine, it's our tax dollars went to purchase that land. One of the other things that I always say is real estate is real estate. If you sell it, you can never buy it back at the price you bought it from, especially on these county lands. They should be protected by us. They could be used as a reserve in the worst case scenario of some kind of a huge deficit, but they should not be, I personally